Welcome back to Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast. And we told y'all we're going to keep sharing life experiences. We have another amazing guest, Reggie Showers, and we're going to let him introduce himself. And then City City is going to kick off that first question. Welcome, Mr. Reggie. You want me to call you Reggie? Or you want to call Mr. Showers? Or you want me to call you Reg?
You call me whatever you want. You can call me Reggie. It's fine. My mother used to call me Reginald. And a matter of fact, when I was a kid, she used to tease me and call me Regina. So, but anyway, no, you call me whatever you want to call me. And I just want to say it's an honor and a privilege to be on your show. Thank you for all the work that you two ladies are doing, bringing light and education and inspiration to your viewers and to the world. You are absolutely doing the work. So it's a pleasure to be on your show. My name is Reggie Showers for your viewers. I am a child of God, and I am, as you can see, an Eagles fan because I was born in West Philadelphia, born and raised.
Thank you again for being here with us this evening. As we do like to start off with all of our guests, we like to start at your beginning, your roots, how you grew up, your home structure, just to kind of formulate a little bit, how you might have entered certain struggles or how they may have affected you. So tell us a little bit about how you grew up, where you grew up, all of that.
Okay. Yeah. Just like I said in my brief intro, in West Philadelphia, born and raised. I grew up in the 60s. I am the youngest of 6 kids. My mother and father. My father actually owned a small corner grocery store in West Philly. Back in those days, they didn't have too many Wawas and 7-Elevens and convenience stores. They had a lot of mom and pop stores on the corners. So my father showed me at an early age the importance of being a man of service and taking care of his community and providing for the community. And me as a little boy, all of my brothers and sisters, we basically all worked in that store at one time or another, as well as some of the neighborhood kids. My dad gave jobs to. So, just ordinary, low to middle class family. I had 2 brothers that went off to Vietnam. My father was a veteran, 2 brothers that were veterans. I was raised in a village. It was back in the day when, other families, you were inspired by other parents and uncles and brothers and sisters, and you could be chastised back in those days by other people's parents. You could be chastised by your church members, the deacons. You could be chastised by your teachers at school. It was a beautiful experience growing up in the inner city, in the community, and in the village in Philadelphia. Had a lot of great inspiration from the music that we listened to some of the books, and we didn't have the internet back in those days, but we had relationships. That was our internet, was our neighborhood, and fostering relationships with other people, something that I think is missing in our communities today. But it was pretty cool experience growing up in West Philadelphia. I wouldn't change it for the world.
And we love to hear testimonies where folks have had great childhoods, because actually on this podcast, we get the total opposite. We get it here and there that people had good childhoods. So that is definitely a blessing. So growing up through school, no issues. When did your first, I guess, traumatic trauma start?
Well, now I had issues. Everybody has issues. I had plenty of issues growing up. I was a chubby kid. So, my mom used to take me to the store to buy me clothes. Back in the day, they used to call us Husky. She used to shop in the Husky section. So I got picked on a lot by a lot of, the bullies and the schoolyard bullies and, neighborhood kids and all that. But it taught me to be strong. It taught me to be resilient. Yeah, and my father, he taught me how to defend myself. I think, a lot of kids go through the bullying. I'm very super sensitive to that as I share my mentor message, I should say, with a lot of the kids that I do mentor, when it comes to bullying and the importance of developing relationships and sticking up for those who may not be strong enough to stick up for themselves. Um, but yeah, I was a very adventurous kid. Uh, Played on top of a lot of houses, abandoned houses, abandoned cars. We hopped on the back of SEPTA is the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, so it's our bus system. We used to hop on the back of buses and running between moving trains, and we did a lot of crazy stuff back in those days because we didn't have the internet, we didn't have video games, we didn't have a lot of the technology and the entertainment that a lot of today's kids have to entertain themselves. And so we went outside and played a lot of sports, stickball, wall ball, half ball, football, out in the middle of the street playing, checkers and a game called Dead Block in between, cars running up and down the street. I mean, it was a challenging time, but we never seemed to get hit, and we always knew how to survive. And it's one of the things that I'm really proud of is growing up in that environment, because it taught me a lot about survival and self-reliance and self-sufficiency and stuff like that. But like I mentioned briefly, I was a very adventurous kid. So when I got challenged, or a friend would, challenge me to, or dare me, I should say, to do a certain thing, I'd pretty much assess the situation and take that dare. Um, the day in question for me, when I got injured, the day that changed my life, for the course of my life, was Memorial Day 1978. My family was having a cookout, just like any normal family was having cookouts on Memorial Day. And it was still early, 1 o'clock or so in the afternoon, and food wasn't ready. We had other family coming over, friends coming over to enjoy some backyard barbecue. So I went out to hang out with some of my friends, like I always do, and we had a little dirt bike track. We used to ride mini bikes and gas dirt bikes in the parking lots and out in the park in West Philadelphia. We had a little dirt bike track set up next to a train yard. Now, this train yard was used for commuter trains as well as freight trains. And these train tracks, they separated two different sections of West Philadelphia, West Philly and the Winfield section. So we had to go across a bridge to go into the Winfield section, and that bridge went over top of the train tracks. So a lot of times we didn't want to go all the way up to the bridge, which was, at 59th Street, and then there was another underpass, which was at 52nd Street, get around these train tracks. So that's 7 blocks. So we would cut across the train tracks to shorten the distance. And so the train tracks were actually a playground of sorts for us kids. We didn't realize the danger that lurked around those trains. A lot of times we would see the conductors of the trains, when they come by, they would see us kids playing out there, and they would actually wave to us. So we thought it was a inviting environment. We didn't know it was a very dangerous place to play. This one particular day, there were some boxcars that were parked out on, sitting out there. I guess they were waiting for to be moved or whatever. And I just looked at those boxcars as a mountain to climb. And this is something that I had done previously. I had climbed on top of boxcars. We used to look inside of boxcars and climb underneath of them, and it was just something to play on. And this day there was some unusually tall boxcars that were parked out on those tracks. Now, some of these trains were diesel locomotive. That's how they pulled their boxcars, and the engines pulled the train cars. And some of these trains were electric. And there was an electric wire that was stretched over top of some of these box on those wires all day long. So we figured if the birds could sit on them, there's no problem with us getting near them. But the problem is the birds actually flew to those wires and they landed on them from the air. Now, if we get close to a wire like that and we're touching the ground, we complete a circuit, and that's where you get electrocuted. And I got on top of one of these tall box cars, and I got too close to one of the electrical power wires. And there was 13,000 volts of electricity going through that wire. And the electricity arced onto me just like a magnet to a paper clip. This, like, I got too close, and then all of a sudden the electricity reached out and touched me. And through the grace of God, I'm still here to give you my testimony. But 13,000 volts of electricity, they tell me that it only takes about 2,500 volts to kill a person in the electric chair. And I got 13,000 volts went through my body. Now, if you don't believe in God after, hearing that, I don't know what else to tell you, because that was a testimony that good Lord was using this situation. He had bigger plans for me. I didn't realize it at the time, but first he had to knock me down, and then he was going to reach down and help pick me up. And my journey, my struggle was all going to be a part of my testimony that I would go out and share with the world, just like I'm sharing with you ladies and all your viewers right now. I didn't realize it at the time. Like I said, I was just a 14-year-old kid. And but there was so much more that he had in store for my life. So I was fortunate. My friends, they saw what happened. They saw the electrocution. I was knocked out initially. The electricity is just so powerful that, my body went into shock, literally and figuratively. And they called the police, and the police arrived, and they called fire and rescue. Then they had to shut the power off in the lines before they could go on top of the boxcar and get me down. They got me down off the boxcar, transported me to a local hospital. And then they saw, the condition that I was in, and they said, we have to airlift him to a major trauma center. So they airlifted me and my father in a helicopter to a major trauma center. And as you can imagine, if you are parents, when you hear that your child has been electrocuted, it's just like one of the most devastating pieces of news that you can be given. So my parents were, they were a wreck. But one thing I can say, I'm moving forward a little bit. My parents never cried in front of me. And that was very, very important. And I'll share that later in the story. It was very important that they never cried in front of me, because they were my rock. They were my support system. And that was something that I needed. It's very important support. So, they airlifted me to a major trauma center and diagnosed my injuries. I had third-degree burns over 40% of my body. But the most dramatic injury was to both of my feet. So the electricity, as it exited my feet, it just killed all the muscles and the flesh. And so the doctors had to amputate both of my legs below my knees. And at that time, I remember the doctor, I was in shock, and they had given me some pain medication and before the actual surgery. And I remember the doctor saying, I'm going to have to amputate both of your legs. And I had dreams of becoming, a basketball player, football player, playing sports, like all inner city kids, especially coming from Philadelphia. We're a stick and ball town. I had dreams of playing sports, and for some reason there was just such a calm that the good Lord put over me, and I just felt like everything was going to be okay. It was devastating news, because how am I going to become a professional athlete and I have to use prosthetic legs? I don't have any feet. But I was okay. I was fine. I was like, okay, well, there goes my sports career, and I just got to go do something else. So they amputated both of my legs, And I spent a month in a burn center healing from my wounds. Very, very painful. I don't know. A third-degree burn or a burn period is one of the most painful injuries that the human body can experience. I don't know what childbirth is like. They tell me childbirth is pretty painful for a woman, but I would rank healing from a burn right up there, a close second, if not a first. But I spent a month in the burn center healing up from my burns. They transported me to a rehab facility in Philadelphia. And that's where I was introduced to prosthetic legs. And I can tell you, in 1978, prosthetic legs were archaic compared to what they are now. Back then, prosthetic leg technology was just very, very, the legs were very heavy. They were very clunky. They didn't stay on very well. You see a lot of amputee athletes today, a lot of amputees, period, doing some amazing things and doing some inspirational things. And one of the reasons why they're doing or they're able to do what they do is because of the advancements in prosthetic technology. All the different composite materials and microprocessors, and that allows people to regain their mobility using a prosthetic device. Back then, no, the struggle was real, if I can share that. But it was all part of my journey,
Can I catch you? Can I catch you real quick?
Yes. Yes.
Sid has a question.
Okay.
Really.
With obviously this was significantly, a moment for you, a trauma for you. But what have you, once, everything was said and done with your friends, what was their kind of testimony of being there? Because I'm pretty sure that, in different ways, maybe traumatized them as well, or, made them feel a certain way. So, once you had the ability to kind of speak with them, what was their testimony there?
Other than thanking them, for being there for me, for getting fire and rescue to help me, we didn't really talk too much about their trauma. They seem to be okay. I think it's a testimony to the kids that grew up back in the 70s. We were tough son bitches, man. And it didn't seem to bother them. They, as long as I was alive, they were like, okay, well, Reggie's going to be okay. All right, let's go out and play now. Not that they didn't care, because they did. And I had amazing support from all of my friends, and my friends who were there. But, other than, hey man, you're going to be okay. And they didn't seem to be too traumatized by, what they witnessed. It's interesting. One of my friends who was there, they passed away. But I don't know if they, witnessed it firsthand, or they just saw the aftermath and heard the noise from the electricity hitting me. We never truly discussed the specifics of that, but they were fine. They were good. They weren't, like scarred for life, like I was, literally and figuratively. But yeah, they were pretty cool.
I want to go back a little bit to the trauma center. I know you said you were there for a month. Can you tell folks, like, what was the process? What did you have to go through? Like, if they remove skin or the surgery?
Yeah. So when you experience a burn, especially a deep burn, like a 3rd-degree burn, that's, your layer of skin is pretty much destroyed. It's gone. As you can see, I have some scars here on this is my right arm, and I also have scars on my left arm. And this skin was pretty much raw. They have to actually scrub that skin, all that dead, burnt skin off, and then and that's very painful. It's hella painful. and then they have to wrap it, dress that skin to protect me against infection. That's an entryway into, my insides or my immune system, your raw flesh. And then there's parts where they had to harvest skin from my thighs, which weren't burnt. They scrape skin off, and then they take that skin and then they graft it on top of all the burnt areas, and they stitch it down, and then that skin then takes hold, and that's called a graft. That's super painful when they harvest. Obviously it's an operation that you do under anesthesia, but the recovery, the healing is very, very painful from the donor site. So I was on morphine. I was a morphine fiend. Every 4 hours, they would give me shots of morphine, and I would look at the clock. If I had a shot at 1 p.m., I knew that my next shot that I could get was at 5 p.m. And I'd sit there and watch that second hand go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I would hit that button and say, I need another shot. I need another shot, because the pain was just intense. It was just really intense at all times. Now, 14-year-old kid, I would have to be bathed. Couldn't bathe myself. And they would, so they have people that would come in scrubs, and they're all sanitized, and they would take me on a gurney and take me to a bathing room where there's other people, other burn survivors in that room, and everything is super sterile. There's these tubs that are lined with plastic liners, and there's warm water inside the tub and the liner, and they lower you down into the tub with a winch and a gurney, and then they sit there, and a team of people would just sit there and just scrub all the dead skin off and all the scars, and you're laying there butt naked, and they just clean you up, and then they bring you out with the lift, and they dry you off, and then they'll have to apply cream and then wrap all your wounds and dress you all, and then you go back to your room, and that's just a hella traumatic experience. Not only painfully.
Was it pain? I was going to ask, was that painful?
Oh, it's very painful. They give you a shot of morphine or Dilaudid before you go through that process, because it is so painful. So sometimes the morphine would knock me out. I would go to sleep while they're doing all that. Other times I was wide awake, but I was just very sedated. But there was times where I would look over and see other people that had gone through burns, and just to see people who had no ears, and their noses were burnt off, and you can see just their faces just all raw, and their bodies are all just scarred and raw, and you're laying there butt naked, they're laying there butt naked, and it was very traumatic for a young kid to see that stuff. And I remember those images like there was yesterday, but made it through.
Even though you said initially you kind of took the news at face value, you were kind of calm about it. At what point did the situation maybe sit in? When did you maybe find yourself sad about it, or what was the height of your healing of recovery process where everything just kind of set in on you?
And in all honesty, I never had not that I can remember, I never had an experience or a point in time where I was sad about what happened to me. And I'm going to tell you why. A huge part of my recovery and my healing was my faith. And I grew up not only across the street from my dad's store, which was on one corner, but on the other corner was my church. So I grew up in the church, very small Baptist church. And my faith got me through this. And I'm going to tell you something else too. My parents, like I said earlier in my testimony, my parents never let me see them cry. They never let me see them cry. They always told me, son, you're going to be okay. We're going to get through this and we're going to help you. You're going to go on to live a fruitful, productive life. And in all honesty, they were bullshitting me like I've never been bullshitted before in my life, because they honestly didn't know if I was going to be okay. But they knew the right thing to do was to tell me that I was going to be okay. And then that tricked me into thinking that I was going to be okay. So they brainwashed me into thinking that I'm going to be all right. And I believed it. And that played a critical role in me recovering from this traumatic injury. They told me I was going to be okay, so I believed them. It was the power of their influence. Worked very well on me from a positive aspect. Now, when they hung up the phone, when we would talk on the phone, or they come to see me and all, they, like I said, they never let me see them cry. But when they left out of the room or they hung up the phone, they bawled their eyes out. They cried, because I'm their child. And I would do the same thing, with my child. I have a 27-year-old daughter, and I would do the same thing. But it was very important for me in my rehabilitation to keep a positive outlook. And they told me, you're going to be fine. So I was raised to believe my elders, to respect my elders. And my elders said I was going to be okay. So I believed them. And I took this with a grain of salt. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make the best out of this situation. It's a bad situation, but there's got to be some light in it somewhere. So I'm glad that they brainwashed me into thinking that I was going to be okay, because I set the bar pretty high for myself moving forward.
And I was going to ask, did you ever have a mental breakdown at some point where you couldn't control those emotions, where you just was like, just cried it out?
I cried about a lot of the pain that I experienced. I cried my ass off because it was a very painful recovery. About, when they were taking the bandages off of my arms and, the parts of my body that were burned. The bandage would stick to the raw skin. Just imagine, you got a cut or something on your arm, and you put a Band-Aid on it, and you try to take it off and it sticks and it hurts. And well, imagine that being all over your arm or on your body. And that was super painful, hella painful. So I cried about a lot of that. But as far as my psychological pain of the trauma, I didn't cry about. I didn't feel sorry for myself one bit. I looked at this as, one big challenge. I said, I'm going to get through this because my parents told me I'm going to get through this. So that's what I did.
And you never went to therapy or anything for this?
And never had any therapy. Never. Never. Okay. To this day. I've been so blessed. My therapy is God. God has, like I said, he gave this to me, and he is the most awesome therapist. And, I thank every day I wake up, I open my eyes, it's the first thing I do is thank him for letting me see the light of a brand new day, and help hold my hand and guide my steps, and, help me to serve him better. So that's what I do every day. And this is all part of his plan for my life. This is what I was chosen for. And he had been preparing me when I was a child for this trauma, for this accident, and for the recovery. And then for me to share the recovery with other people so they could be inspired to deal with their trauma, whatever it is that they're dealing with. If it's an apple to my orange, it's still trauma. And how I dealt with mine, with my faith helped me. And sometimes, in all honesty, it's not what you say, but it's sometimes people just got to see you, they got to see you out there living your life. And I wear short pants. I wear prosthetic legs to walk, and I wear short pants all the time. And sometimes I get tired of wearing short pants. It's cold out or whatever. I do wear long pants, but sometimes I know that it's important for people to see what I'm going through and what I deal with, because people have struggles of their own that we don't know about. And sometimes we all need some inspiration. We all need to be uplifted at times. And sometimes you can just look at somebody who has what you think is a tougher life than yours, and you see them living their life to the fullest. And that can just be a spark that helps you to get over that hump, to climb that mountain that's in front of you. Instead of going around it, you can go over top of it. So sometimes I know the importance of people just seeing me and seeing my scars. I wear short sleeves and seeing my legs, and I'm living my life to the best of my ability. I'm not Superman, but I try to just represent the disabled community to the best of my ability and help other people, live their best lives.
Regarding, your parents, did this at all put, your family into any kind of financial trials? And did you have to make any adjustments to, your residence, like ramps and equipment and things like that? Like what type of, lifestyle changes happened here?
Yeah, that's a great question, because this happened back in 1978. There was no ADA. There was no Americans with Disabilities Act. That didn't start until 1986, I think it was, that the ADA came out. I think it was 1986. I think it was. So I went right back to school. And if I could backtrack just a little bit, I spent the month of June in the Burn Center. I spent the month of July in rehabilitation, learning how to walk with prosthetic legs. And that took me about a month to learn how to use them. And then I came home in August, and probably in mid-August, and I just kept walking. I walked in those prosthetic legs every single day. I had a cane. And then I went back to school and joined my class in ninth grade. And all my classmates from the 8th grade, they were shocked to see me come walking in, and walking a little slower, a little more carefully with these new prosthetic legs. But there was no ramps. There were steps. There was no elevators. There were steps. There was no wheelchair. I didn't have a wheelchair. I didn't have any of that. It was steps. I had to go up. It was all we had, and I had to deal with it. So there was no conveniences like a lot of what we have in our society today, regarding disabled parking and all that. Man, it was none of that. We had to park as far away from the door, whatever the parking space was. We had to park, and I had to walk, or I got dropped off at the front door. But it's interesting that when we did have a little amputee support group in rehab, and there was a gentleman who came back. He had already been through the rehabilitation process, older gentleman in his 70s, bilateral below knee amputee like myself. And he came to talk to a group of us amputees who were still in wheelchairs. We didn't have our prosthesis yet. We were still going through learning how to walk in them and parallel bars and all that. And being that he was an older gentleman, I don't know what his limitations were, but he had a lot of them. And he was telling us about, the things that we could and could not do once we get out of this rehabilitation hospital. And it was frightening, because he told us that we couldn't walk on grass, and you can't walk on thick carpet. Back in the 70s, shag carpet was all the rage. Everybody had shag carpet in their houses. And, he said, if you have your bedroom up on the second floor, you have to bring it down. You have to bring your bed downstairs. And that just terrified me. This is what my life is going to be when I get out of this place. No way. So I was very cautious when I did get out of rehab and I walked on grass for the first time, because I was raised to believe in my elders and listen to my elders. And this elderly man told me all the things that I could not do. And I figured that he knew more than I did. He'd already been through the rehabilitation process, but that was misinformation. That was the limitation set in his mind that he shared with us, which terrified the hell out of me. But it was a good learning lesson for me, because it taught me the importance of sharing positive information with other people who are going through a similar a journey or situation like you are, like I am. The importance of sharing good, positive information. Human beings are very resilient. We overcome a lot of things, especially kids. Kids are very resilient. They bounce back, and I could speak hours about my experiences, helping kids who have been through trauma compared to helping adults who have been through similar trauma, amputee kids and amputee adults. But it's very important to share positive, uplifting support with those who have gone through, any type of a limb loss, to let them know that life is going to be okay. And there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's not all dark. But this gentleman, he shared a lot of darkness with us, and it was terrifying.
I was going to ask how supportive was the school? Did they help you with accommodations? How did the kids react to you? Did they make fun of you? Were they supportive? Like, what was the support system like?
I was fortunate. In the 8th grade, I just happened to be, my class president. So a lot of the kids liked me. They were very supportive of me. And then when they heard that I got electrocuted, everybody, they flooded the hospital with phone calls, and the hospital switchboard actually had to shut down calls to my room because I was getting so many calls. So I had a lot of support. I had really good support. A lot of my friends came to visit me, and this, that, and the other. So when I did go back to school in the 9th grade, everybody welcomed me. All the teachers that had heard about, my new teachers who didn't know me, they were very supportive. Everybody welcomed me. There was no accommodations made, no special accommodations. It was an old school building, no elevators, no ramps, no nothing. I had to walk up them stairs just like everybody else. And that was instrumental in me developing the skill set physically that I developed using prosthetic legs to walk. And I tell people, especially the kids that I mentor, education is so super important. Education strengthens your mind, just like lifting weights strengthens your body or the particular body part that you're exercising. And I tell them about how, life can sometimes be hard, especially when you're pursuing, specific goals. But a positive byproduct of all that hard work is skill, is strength, and experience. So I had to put in a lot of hard work going up and down stairs. As an amputee, it's really challenging for me to walk up and down stairs. It's challenging for me to climb, a ladder or walk on uneven surfaces. But the more I do it, the better I get at it. And that's what I tell a lot of my students that I work with. I teach at a nonprofit school, and that's further down the story. I tell them how difficult it is for me as an amputee to do certain things that I do, or to have accomplished a lot of the goals that I've accomplished. It's really hard. It's challenging. It's hard as hell. But like I said, a positive byproduct of all that hard work is skill, it's strength. So I like to say I'm a master at walking in prosthetic legs. I've been told that I'm an anomaly. I'm like a professor. Been told that by a lot of different prosthetists and engineers that develop prosthetic legs, and they say, man, you really got it down. You really know what you're doing, and I'm very, very blessed. And see, that didn't come overnight. That came from the struggle. Now, if I had ramps, if I had wheelchairs, if I had elevators, I would never have gotten to exercise my skill set to get to the level of where I am. So I'm no different than anybody else. I'm a human being. I got the same everything that everybody else has. But it's just that I'm exercised that much more in using my prosthetic legs in everyday life. So I've become a master at it to an extent. And I think I have this. Everybody else has those same capabilities. God forbid you ladies ever have an amputation. I could guide you through the right path. And to do the work, you have to do the work, but you could be just as good as I am, if not better, with all of the advancements in technology, prosthetic technology that's available for us today. So, but no, it's to answer your question, I'm a little winded, long-winded. There was no accommodations made, and I'm glad that there wasn't, because it made me who I am today.
With being an amputee at the time, where you said there's really no laws and protection for disabled people. What have you found to be, some of the better or some of the best technological advances, for prosthetics or even, legislation? What has been something you've been grateful and proud to see happen, to protect disabled people?
So there's a lot of different components on how I can answer that question. A lot of what I've seen that's helped the amputee community is advancements in technology through composites, through microprocessors, computer aided hydraulics. There's a lot of lighter, stronger materials that allows a prosthetist to construct a prosthesis that is lighter, stronger, faster, like $6 million man type stuff. And it actually helps me ambulate. It helps me walk better. It helps me walk farther. There's less stress. There's less fatigue. There's less pain. So there's a lot of little things that engineers, that prosthetic companies. I work for a prosthetic foot company. I have been for the last, what is this, like since 1990? So 20 some years, 20 years. I was sponsored by them in 1999. 25 years, 24 years. And they used me as a beta tester to test out new technology. And a lot of the feet and the components have gotten lighter. They've gotten stronger. They've gotten smaller, which allows me to do certain things. And if I can just share with you, we have a new product that came out. It's a torsion device, or the foot actually kind of rotates a little bit to the left and to the right. And you wouldn't think that would make such a big difference, but having just a little tiny bit of rotation is really important, because it relieves certain stresses when I rotate my body. If I'm standing at a sink and I'm washing dishes, and I rinse the dish off, and then I just turn to put the dish in the dish rack. Well, without rotation in my foot would actually, or my residual limb that's inside of my prosthetic socket, would actually kind of get caught up, or there's no relief. So it kind of binds a little bit. And I'm just a subtle turn that I'm rotating my body to put the dish in the dish rack. Well, with a rotational device or a foot that has rotation, then that relieves that pressure inside the socket, and it's comfortable. I'm like, wow, that's cool. Or if you're a golfer, and you want to swing that golf club and hit the ball, you can actually turn and rotate a whole lot more efficiently. Or if you're swinging a baseball bat, and you can swing that bat and rotate. And so these little advancements in prosthetic technology has allowed me and other amputees like myself to venture out and do other activities and participate in sports and just have a more comfortable experience when it comes to ambulation. One of the other things that has helped us is the power of support. And we've realized as people, as a community, that support, whatever you've gone through, that support is very important. We tend to focus on the physical therapy, or we used to focus a lot on the physical therapy. Let's get this person up and walking again so they can get their mobility, so they can have their independence, and they cannot be a burden on their family or on society. But equally important is the therapy, is the psychological and the emotional support. And that's where we didn't have a lot of that back in the 70s and 80s. When I first became an amputee, I had nobody to talk to. I had nobody to discuss issues. Are girls going to like me? How am I going to drive a car? Can I dance? Will I be able to walk my daughter down the aisle, when she gets married? Yada, yada, yada. I didn't have nobody to answer these questions for me. So there was some voids. There was some worry, some concern, some stress in concerning those types of issues. But now, if you have a smartphone or a device, a computer, you can get online and find a support group anywhere in the world. And even if, I love going to Thailand, I could be in Thailand and get on the internet and be here talking with you ladies, or join a support group in New York City and talk with other amputees that have gone through certain issues and found, ways around certain problems that, us amputees deal with, skin breakdown, or, hey, I'm looking for a new prosthetist. I got a great prosthetist. You should, check out this person. Here's, their number, blah, blah, blah. So we have, to make a long story short, not only have advancements in prosthetic technology made life better for us, but we've realized the importance of support. And there's so many more support groups that help us deal with, our daily lives and the issues. I mean, look at your podcast. You talk to some amazing people that have gone through so many, traumatic issues, or a plethora of different, challenges and stuff. And now I may not have experienced what they're experiencing, but I can take some of the information that they've shared on their journey and say, you know what? I never thought about even trying that with the problem that I got over here. Damn, that's a pretty good idea. So, this all works. This is all part of the village doing the work to help life be better for all of us. So, and again, I thank you all for doing what you do.
Our pleasure. I have a quick question.
Yep.
You've done some amazing things. I'm so shocked. Can you talk a little bit about being drag racing, motorcycle, double champ? Just a little bit. How did you get there? And did you go through any challenge?
There was hella challenges, and I'll be as brief as I possibly can. I first started drag racing motorcycle back in 1983, 84, 83 on a street. I had a street bike, and the drag race scene in Philadelphia was huge back in those days. The drag race scene on the street was huge back in those days. We had a street called Front Street that was famous for illegal drag racing. And I would go down there and watch as a spectator. And my parents did not want me to have a motorcycle, but I had a girlfriend, and I saved my money, and I bought a used motorcycle, and I kept it over to her house. And even when me and her stopped seeing each other, I still kept it at her house in her garage. Her mom and pop were real cool. And, but I would go out every weekend to Front Street and out to, Fairmount Park, as Will Smith's, Summertime video, and the song said, the lyrics say, a place called the Plateau is where everybody go. Well, I'd be out at the Plateau on the weekends with my motorcycle, and we get races started and all that. But yeah, I hid the fact that I was an amputee when I was trying to get into racing, because back then inclusion was not a thing like it is now. We make provisions, concessions, if you will, for people who are different, so they can participate. Well, back then it was like, nah, this is too dangerous for you. You can't play in this sandbox. So I figured, you know what? Let me just keep this quiet. Let me race to the best of my ability. And I started racing. I wore long pants all the time. I didn't walk with an obvious limp, and nobody knew that I was an amputee. A handful of my close friends knew, but they weren't sharing the information. And I went out and started racing, and racing a motorcycle is very, very hard for anybody. But racing a motorcycle for a double amputee is hella difficult. Again, anything that's hard, if you do the work and you keep at it, you will develop skill, you will develop strength. And being that racing a motorcycle was so hard for me, I got very, very strong doing it. I made a lot of mistakes, but I learned more from my failures than I did my successes. And I think the most successful people on earth are the people who have failed more than anybody else, because they got an education about what not to do the next time. So I got a whole lot of education about, don't do it this way because it didn't work. Don't do it that way because that didn't work either. Do it this way. Oh, that works. Okay, well, let's keep doing it this way. And I went out and raced, and these motorcycles that I raced, they like land missiles. They go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 1 second. They go from 0 to 100 miles per hour in just 2 seconds. And they covered a quarter mile in less than 7 seconds at 200 miles per hour. And it's like a land missile. It's when you let the clutch go, you're thrown forward so far, so fast, and so hard. It's like 3 Gs of acceleration right off the starting line. And it's the most amazing rush. It's better than any drug. But that is a drug, I guess, in itself. And I had the needle in my arm hanging out. I was a drag race junkie. I won a championship in 1989 and set a bunch of world records, all while keeping my amputation a secret. And after I won the championship, set the records, I figured, okay, well, I'm the best that there is in my class. They can't tell me that I can't do it because I just proved that I'm better than everybody else. And that's when I found that it was really, I started to share my story, tell people I was an amputee, and everybody just about fell out. They lost their minds. They couldn't believe, that, what? He ain't got no legs, man. What? He just beat our ass. I can't believe, no, this ain't the same dude. No, you talking about some other Reggie, and that's where I saw it was really important for me to share my story, especially with kids, because a lot of fans would come up to my trailer with their kids and say, Mr. Reggie, man, your story is so amazing. You're such an awesome drag racer. I can't believe you do what you do. Can you tell my kid, how you did this? And, can you inspire my kid? And I'm like, you know what? Absolutely I can. But you know what? This is important. I really need to start sharing this with more people. And that's when the door opened, when I started becoming more and more transparent, wearing short pants all the time. I got my pilot's license in 1991. I went through flight training. It took me, I don't know, close to a year off and on to get my pilot's license. And back then, the FAA, they didn't, what? You're an amputee? Nah, you ain't flying this airplane. Or they were, okay, it's got to be you got to have special equipment, this, that, and I was like, nah, my flight instructor didn't even know I was an amputee. And I trained with that man for like a year. He didn't even know I was an amputee because I wore long pants all the time. My examiner, when I went to go take my test, and I passed my test, I got my license, he didn't know I was an amputee. Then I started moving up, flying faster airplanes, flying airplanes with 2 engines, got my multi rating, and that all, you got to work rudder pedals and I passed all that stuff. But it was a testimony to the human spirit. I started to set little goals for myself. And as I accomplished those goals, I started to develop skill, started to develop confidence. And that confidence started to spread exponentially. Okay, if I can race motorcycles and become a champion, I can get my pilot's license. I just got to do the work. Okay, now I got my pilot's license. If I can do that, you know what? I can go teach people how to snowboard. I'm a certified snowboard instructor. Okay, I did that. You know what? I can go climb that mountain and raise funds for people in Ecuador and that don't have prosthetic care, people in Haiti. I've been to Ecuador, I've been to Haiti, I've been to Palestine to help other children who don't have proper prosthetic care. And so it just starts spreading, just trying to do the work, help people. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Obviously there are things that, you've done that people with not being an amputee have done. You've accomplished a lot. What is actually something that you haven't accomplished yet that you still want to do?
Oh, man. That's a good question. Because I've done a lot.
He probably done did almost everything from what I hear. I'm impressed.
I walked across the African Serengeti, and that was part of a National Geographic Channel reality TV show called Migrations. And we had to walk 200 miles from the Serengeti Plains to the Mara River. And we had very little food. We had very little water. We had to find water as we went. There was like lions and hyena and Cape buffalo and crocodiles. And yeah, it was crazy. It was kind of like Survivor. And I did that. That was huge. Then that got me into raising funds, like climbing mountains to raise funds. What else what haven't I done? I would love to have a private income to where I could just travel around the world and help people, go to these third world countries and then just be Secret Santa and just help people. And that's what I like to do. I just don't have the private income yet.
I think you should
Just
put
need
some out.
social
You
media
fundraising.
income.
I think you could fundraise for that.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
with social media, they're doing that a lot. Especially with like the homeless people, for example, they'll meet somebody, show everything they're going through. They do crowdfunding, and they're able to give them whatever they need. So I mean, it's
You know what
possible. You don't always got to come out your own pocket.
I hate, Sid? I hate depending on other people. I hate asking people for help.
Yeah.
I'm a very independent person, and I would just like to just have it and do it the way I want to do it instead of having to go knock on people's door. Hey, can you help me? Because I have raised funds for lots of different initiatives, and I would just like to hit that Powerball, man, and just travel the world. And you know what? Here, just like Prince. Prince was a philanthropist. He didn't say much about all the things that the people that he helped, and I'd like to do that. Shaq helps a lot of people. There's a lot of people that do have a lot of resources. With that kind of money comes great responsibility, and I would love to do that. Yeah. Could I put y'all on hold for 1 second? I know this is a podcast. I gotta go to bed, drink like a gallon of water.
We back. We back. This was another amazing episode. I know we probably could have went 2 hours. We probably could have went longer. We're almost at time, and we want to thank you so much for your testimony. Really quick, like we do all our guests, is we want to ask, what advice would you give from your life experience that could help someone going through burns? Third degree burns. Is that I'm saying that right?
Yep.
Third degree burns or amputee. My grandmother actually was an amputee. She had her leg amputated from diabetes.
Mm-hmm. That's a common occurrence.
Yeah. So I didn't have to go through it, but I've dealt with someone that went through, and I had to help her a lot. And I know that's a struggle because she actually wanted to give up. She didn't have the willpower and the strength that you have. So just to see how encouraging you are, and you didn't give up, and you had a strong support system behind you, which led you to being even stronger. That is a testimony within itself. So what advice would you give someone that is suffering with third degree burns or even an amputee to continue to live their life and to be successful and to achieve?
I think you answered that question with the words in your statement when you said a strong support system. Nobody has done anything on their own. The most successful people in the world have not become successful by themselves. They always had some type of support. Michael Jordan had Scottie Pippen. Jalen Hurts, our Eagles quarterback, he's got some amazing wideouts in AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, and the team around them. So I've been successful in a lot of the goals that I set for myself because I've had help. And whatever your viewers are struggling with, whether it be a third degree burn like myself, an amputation like what I've been through, domestic violence, sexual abuse, people who have filed bankruptcy. I mean, all kinds of things that human beings go through. It's really, really important that you find somebody to help you, to find a mentor, to find a coach, to find guidance, somebody who has already been down that road, and they can help you navigate, those waters that you don't know how to navigate. There's things that I don't know how to do. There's some new business challenges that I'm getting ready to get into. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm going to just commit and get in there and learn as I go. But there's also people that are doing what I want to do. They've already done it. So I reach out to them and ask for help. And I would tell your viewers, or I would really advise your viewers to find some help. Find somebody that has already been down the road that you're getting ready to go, and ask them for support. I lost my mother 2 years ago. She was 93 years old, and she started to suffer from dementia. And it was very traumatic. I was her caregiver for the last 5 years of her life, and I put my life on hold. And it was one of the toughest things. I think it was probably the toughest thing I've ever had to do in my life. It was to care for my mom. And I watched her take her last breath in her bed. I was right there with her. But I had support that helped me. And it was very, very instrumental in me getting through, that trauma. Was being around other people who had already gone through it. And I know the good Lord put me in that position because now I have lived that, and I can help somebody else go through that experience themselves, and I can help hold their hand. So get you some support. There's people out there that want to help you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that advice, that wisdom. As we like to do for all of our guests, we like to give you a chance to participate in shameless plug. So you see all of your information scrolling across the bottom here. If you want to let our viewers know how they can contact you if they're going through something similar, if they have any questions, inquiries, needed some guidance, support, anything that you have for sale, anything you want to draw traffic to, anything you're advocating for, you have the floor.
Well, I am very transparent, and I'm always willing to help. You can find me on all things social at just Reggie Showers. You can Google my name, social media. I'm on just about every platform. I don't do that X thing, though. I'm not about that no more. My Instagram game is very weak, but I am there. I'm an old head. I do that Facebook thing like a lot of the old heads do. And like I said, I'm getting ready to get into a new business venture. It's going to be really, really cool, doing racing themed parties, because I am a racer at heart. And even though I'm not racing anymore, but I do have some really cool race toys that I'm going to be setting up to do racing themed parties, and social events, racing themed social events. So I will be building a website for that. But in the meantime, your followers can hit me up if you have any questions, or if you know somebody that could use some advice, living with a new amputation or a burn or something, and just hit me up on social media. I'll be there, and I'm always answering people.
Okay, everyone, tell Reggie to come follow me back on social media, because I followed him.
I can do that. Like I said, my game is weak, man. I'm gonna do that as soon as we hang up.
Okay. Reggie, we want to thank you for sharing your testimony with us. We want to thank you for being a guest on Unfiltered Unspoken podcast. It was an honor to have you. Thank you for your transparency. Just God bless you and all the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you, ladies. Much love.
Thank you. Look, that's my thing. Look. Yes, and another amazing testimony in the books of Unfiltered Unspoken podcast. And I tell people, a duo like me and Sid, we've been rocking since October 10th, 2022, and we still going, and we still gonna keep sharing them testimonies. Ain't that right, Sid?
That's right.
All right. So tune in every Monday at 8 p.m. ET. We're gonna bring it to you. And if you're going through any life trauma, we probably have almost every life trauma that you can think of, and we're not going to stop. This is built off of faith. This is a journey from God, and we're going to keep sharing testimonies. So thank you for tuning in to Unfiltered Unspoken podcast. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube, Unfiltered Unspoken podcast. And if you would like to be a guest, It's running across the screen. Email Demetria at unfilteredunspoken.com. And we will see you soon. Peace.